Welcome to this narrated PowerPoint. I'm Jay Rasmussen, a professor of education and the CAS Faculty Development Coordinator. For this particular presentation, I have one learning target. As you can see on the screen, please set a goal of selecting one or more specific strategies to improve the exam preparation process for all of your learners. For us as university instructors, exams, whether in the form of quizzes or tests, present a powerful opportunity for student learning. That learning is often brought about because emotion drives attention and attention drives learning. For the majority of Bethel students, preparing for and taking exams is an emotion-laden experience that tends to grab attention and maximize cognitive processing. Please advance to the next slide and we'll look at 6 suggested practices to help your students gain the most learning possible from the exam experience. Each of these 6 practices will be explained more fully in the presentation that follows. Please do consider which, if any, practices could work with your specific group of learners and content discipline. While study guides are a staple test preparation tool, research has revealed several specific ways in which they can be made more beneficial for students. Instead of basic lists of objectives and terms to know, study guides are most effective if they include review questions that mirror those found on the exam. So as to give students the best idea of what to expect on the exam and what will be required of them, it is best if the review questions reflect accurately the variety of assessment items they will encounter. In addition to review questions, the most effective study guides have been shown to include expected learning outcomes. However, students usually prefer study guides that are centered on review questions. As a whole, study guides are most effective and most utilized by students if they're attractive and well organized, interactive, user-friendly, and varied in content presentation. Sample tests are also very important for students, as they will inform them of important content areas and just how they will be asked to master the material. These sample tests need to specifically reflect learning outcomes in the language that's used. For example, know this or be able to reproduce this. For essay tests in particular, providing students with test verb definitions on the study guide is helpful in eliminating the common error of prompt misunderstanding. For example, prompts such as create and devise, or infer, or compare and contrast, or illustrate, synthesize, and so forth. Finally, it's especially important to provide students with ways to self-assess on study guides, so they'll be able to keep track of their level of mastery on the material. In addition to study guides, study groups are a research-supported exam preparation technique. Study groups are an effective test preparation method because they've been shown to both facilitate learning and they tend to improve critical thinking and self-esteem more than traditional learning methods. This assessment preparation technique works best when groups meet regularly, when the groups are either formalized by the instructor or formed via a sign-up sheet. Both means prevent group attrition, and when the instructor distributes a list of student names and contact information. Research has also shown that exam review sessions are beneficial exam preparation tools. Holding instructor-facilitator review sessions before an exam can be extremely helpful to students in their test preparation if run effectively. First, it's most beneficial for students if the discussion is led by student Q&A rather than the instructor posing and answering all questions and regurgitating lectures. Second, be sure that students know to come prepared to ask questions and discuss material, and not just to expect a condensed lecture review from the instructor. Even more specifically, having students discuss review questions in pairs or small groups and then you as the instructor mock grading their answers in front of the class gives students an idea of how they will be assessed and also encourages student self-assessment. For essay tests in particular, it is recommended to have students generate essay questions in pairs or small groups, try to answer them, and evaluate the responses. This activity gives students an opportunity to practice taking the exam, which reduces test anxiety. Also note that having students generate test questions provides information that lets the instructor know if students have mistaken expectations for an upcoming exam, and giving feedback on these questions will then help students reorganize their studying. As it is highly likely that the majority of material being studied in study guides, study groups, and review sessions is written, yet another useful research-based test preparation method has to do with how to best absorb written material. 80% of research agrees that reviewing pertinent readings and materials prior to the exam improves test performance. However, utilizing the active recall technique provides students with the most effective way to study, retain, and recall written material. Also called the 3R technique, read, recite, and review, students read a section of material, put it down, and then try to recite or summarize aloud as much as they can remember, and then reread the section. This manner of self-testing gets at the skills needed for good exam performance. Along the same lines as the reading strategy discussed earlier, research also points to student metacognition as a key variable in exam preparation and performance. Metacognition does play a key role in student learning capacity. When students have learned to actively reflect on their own thinking and learning, they develop the ability to take ownership of that learning, to self-regulate, which paves the way for effective learning. Research has discovered a positive correlation between improved metacognition and academic success, as well as a positive correlation between poor metacognitive skills and poor academic performance. Some key questions that students can ask themselves to engage in helpful metacognitive exam preparation practices are shown on the screen. These questions, by the way, are excellent to distribute to students when an exam situation arises. Finally, research provides instructors with ways in which they can reduce the handicapping effects of test anxiety. The nature of test anxiety is twofold in that it concerns both cognitive and physiological reactions to stress, although the cognitive component is the most detrimental in terms of exam performance. Test anxiety causes the student's thought processes to be severely handicapping, focusing on peer comparison, consequences of bad grades, and equating self-worth with test performance. While mild levels of test anxiety actually encourage learning and improve test performance, high levels of anxiety are an overall hindrance. Also, although high levels of test anxiety improve rote recall, it stifles the cognitive flexibility and creativity required for short answer and essay question responses. There are several steps an instructor can take to reduce student test anxiety. For example, it lessens anxiety levels when the instructor reviews exam materials prior to the exam, is explicit about the degree of difficulty of a given exam, and does not monitor exams in progress. In other words, walking around the room, looking over shoulders, etc., or interrupting or making clarifications after the exam has been distributed. In addition to these precautions, it is beneficial when the course syllabus contains an exam schedule, course expectations, and a concrete grading system and make-up policies. It may also behoove the instructor to consider giving exams with more frequency, so as to prevent overwhelming material coverage and harsh consequences, and to be sure that exams are written with the time frame in mind. Now that we've reached the conclusion of this PowerPoint, I suggest that you select one or more of the exam preparation practices to incorporate this semester in selected coursework. In my estimation, your students will appreciate the effort that you've invested in their exam preparation, and additional student learning will result. Thanks for joining me in this narrated PowerPoint. For additional information about any of the suggested strategies, feel free to consult the references cited in the next 3 slides. Blessings as you seek to make an impact on the students entrusted to you.